The Dark Enchantment. 4 knuckles rapped 7 times on the door of the high room in the castle, and when the princess bade her visitor to enter, King Claude strode in, and after him came Tocco, and the royal recorder, and the royal physician.
"We have 3 bitter things to say. A fact, a tale, and a conclusion,"
began Claude, and his heavy face turned red. "If I may speak first, sire," said the princess, "I have a bitter doubt to say."
"Then speak your doubt," said Claude, "unless it touch the honor of my sons or me."
"Tut, tut, tut, tut," said Tocco, who was peering closely at the princess.
"Tut me no tuts," said Claude. "I'm in no mood this day for tutting."
He waved his hand, and the princess went on. "The doubt has come to me that since I cannot remember my name, perhaps I have no name to speak of. Perhaps I am a milkmaid or a kitchen wench."
"Tut, tut," said Tocco. "My mother was a country maid and often used to sing, 'When all the princesses are gone, the country maids will still go on.'"
"I have no contempt for any woman," said the princess, "as long as she confesses who and what she is. And there are rules, decrees, and orders by which no maid of low estate or common blood may marry John."
"Or Thag,"
said Claude.
"Or Gallo,"
said the royal recorder.
"My father used to sing a rhyme that went in part," said Tocco. "Kings and princes, dolts and dunces."
"You'll end your rhyme in the dungeon if you do not hold your peace,"
cried King Claude. He walked over to the princess, who was once more scanning the 3 roads with anxious eyes.
"I could swear, and almost do, in spite of facts I'm privy to, that you're a princess of the blood."
He turned and addressed the others.
"Mark the manner of her speech and the carriage of her head."
"And the slimness of her ankle, and the smallness of her foot," said the royal recorder. "And the highness of her forehead, and the brightness of her eye," said Tocco.
"You are deceived by illusion," cried the royal physician, who had been quietly taking his own pulse, but not counting it, for as a patient he still considered himself sick, while as a physician he contended that he was well. "It's this confounded sorcery. I tell you, nothing confuses the practice of medicine 1/2 as much as sorcery. I recall a patient I had, a wizard, who could cause a tumor to dance all over his body and assume even the appearance of a flower or a jewel. Let us not be taken in by false shapes and semblances. What is was, and what was will be. I'll test the creature's heart."
"The lady's heart,"
said Claude. "We'll go by seeming till we have the proof."
"I promised her a fact, a tale, and a conclusion," said Claude.
"I'll tell the tale,"
said Tocco. "I'll draw the conclusion," said the royal physician.
"I'll state the fact," said the royal recorder. "It is a fact, then," he said to the princess, "that you cannot remember your name."
"Tocco will tell the tale," said Claude.
"In point of fact," said the royal recorder, "and truth and count and number, there are more tales than one to tell. There's Tocco's tale and 9 besides, all identical, exact, and parallel."
"We'll stick to one," said Claude, "since they're all the same."
"I merely wish to state, avow, affirm, asseverate, maintain, confess, proclaim, protest, announce, vouchsafe, and say that there are precisely 10 such tales in all, and each and every one duplicates, substantiates, corroborates, and proves each and every other."
"Don't wrap me up in words," cried Claude. "Tocco, tell the tale."
And Tocco told the tale of the white deer of 100 years ago, and how it was in truth a deer, and not a princess of the blood. The princess listened in silence, standing very still.
"The royal physician will draw the conclusion," ordered King Claude.
The royal physician, who had been saying, "Ah," to himself in a corner and tapping his chest and counting to 9, stepped forward.
"The conclusion to be drawn,"
he said, touching the tips of his fingers together,
"the conclusion to be drawn is that you are in fact and in truth beyond the shadow, question, or peradventure of a doubt. But stay, I did not test your heart."
He placed his right ear against the breast of the princess and listened, muttering, and "ho," and again.
"The heart is much too high, he announced at last, "both as to location and rapidity of beat. There is a definite skip, such as might be brought on by too much leaping over brooks, much too much leaping over brooks. But I could not give a final opinion, of course, until I had examined the brooks."
The king scowled and looked away.
"Draw the conclusion," he ordered. "Ah, yes, the conclusion," said the royal physician. "The conclusion is that in all human probability, or should I say all animal probability, but certainly not to all intents and purposes, you are, dear lady, a dear creature, I should say, a deer."
"Say, ah," the royal physician added to himself, and he retired to a corner, saying, "Ah." King Claude stared at the cold stone floor, his face still flushed. The royal recorder fumbled foolishly with a pocket full of seals and ribbons. Tocco's dim old eyes, no longer strong enough to see the moon or the stars, were soft with pity. The princess did not move, except to lift her head a little higher.
"If you still cannot remember your name, then you must be a deer," said the king.
"A princess would remember her name," said the royal recorder.
"Particularly in view of the fact that there is no evidence of a concussion severe enough to eradicate memory, and no marked dilation or contraction of the pupils of the eye to indicate the presence of a potion, filter, or other obliterant," said the royal physician. "Obliterant," he repeated, frowning. "Is there such a word?"
"You are perhaps thinking of eradicant," said the royal recorder. "Eradicant is a word, I believe, although when you repeat it, it does sound meaningless."
"Be done with this weighing of words, this measuring of meaning," cried Claude. "Explain the nature of the spell, the rule of her enchantment."
The royal recorder cleared his throat and spoke. "In enchantments of this kind, which I hold to be in extremely bad taste, the true deer, having assumed the face and form of a princess, finds it impossible, for obvious reasons, to retain the love of knight or prince or peasant, once her unhappy secret is revealed."
"Get on with it, get on with it," ordered the king.
"Love most certainly shall fail you thrice. Thus runs the line and measure of your spell," intoned the recorder solemnly. "When love has failed you thrice, you will resume the shape and semblance of a deer."
"And mind you, no more leaping over brooks. Bad for the heart," the royal physician said. Me," he added, testing his throat for soreness.
"Alas and woe, unhappy doe," the royal recorder cried.
"Hold your tongue, you saucy clerk," said Claude. "This lady is a princess to the present sight, and shall be so addressed while still she stands on 2 legs, not on 4.
The princess spoke at last, her dark eyes clear and fearless. "I ask the right to tell my prince, before he claims my heart and hand, this sorry tale," she said.
"Asked and granted, done and done," Claude bowed. "And spoken like a princess."
The royal recorder cleared his throat again.
"If it should chance, happen, occur, take place, or come to pass, that this prince or that or the other should still maintain his love for you in spite of what has been and truly is and should be, why, then you will forever keep the shape and semblance of a princess. So reads the ancient spell, so runs the old enchantment. Tocco stepped forward and raised his hand. I beg you to remember, Claude, the mother of your sons once bore the shape and semblance of a deer, and yet she was in truth a princess of the royal blood. But damn it all, she knew her name, cried Claude. This pretty dear, this princess, by your own decree, the royal recorder said. This princess, then, Claude began again, and flushed and turned away. I am what I will be, said the princess. I will be what I am.
There's this to lift your heart, said Claude. You were the swiftest deer that ever tried the strength and skill of men. No common oaf shall give you chase, as in the case of Tocco's father's deer. You're fit for kings and princes as you stand or as you run.
The room had clouded with darkness, and in the moment of silence that followed the king's high praise, there was a distant sound of many hoofbeats. The king strode to the window and looked out. What magic's this? He shouted. Behold! 3 trophies shine together. 3 princes ride as one. Their paths have crossed and joined where inch and second meet. There's miracle in this, and a sorcery. Tocco, the royal recorder, and the royal physician peered over King Claude's enormous shoulders and beheld Thag and Gallo and Jorn galloping for the castle gates, their trophies shining in their hands, their horses racing nose to nose as if in single harness. The princess, who stood with her back to the fading light of the window, her eyes closed, felt a hand take hers and heard the deep voice of Quando the dwarf saying, Come. He led her from the room and down the winding stone stair and into the great circular chamber. He handed her into the high carved golden chair and squatted on the floor beside it at her right. The circular room rang with the sound of running feet as the breathless king and his breathless retainers rushed in through one door and the panting princes rushed in through another. Before the princess in the golden chair could make the sorry tale of her enchantment heard above the stamping and the shouts, the princes placed, all at the same moment, their trophies at her feet. Thag, the golden tusks of the great blue boar, Gallo, the sacred sword of Lorelei, and Jorn, the silver chalice filled with rubies, the while they cried in perfect unison, I claim your heart and hand. A heavy, breathing silence fell at last, and no man moved. The princes knelt, each on one knee, their eyes upon the princess. The king and his retainers stood like frozen men. Quando squatted, motionless. The princess rose, straight and fine and fearless, and spoke in her low and lovely voice, addressing the king. I know not in what order to proceed. 3 princes kneel as one, 3 trophies shine together. The king scowled and turned to the royal recorder. Announce the order, he commanded. This wonder is unknown, at least in my time, said the royal recorder. And in my time, and in my father's, said old Tocco. But I should say, if you will so decree it, said the royal recorder to the king. Decreed, said Claude. Decreed and done, and done. Then let the eldest son speak first, and so on, in that order. I cannot see a thing, said Tocco. Light the torches, cried the king, and through the castle halls the order echoed, Light the torches! Light the torches! Light the torches! 12 small men in yellow flashed about the chamber, and in a moment flames flared from the circular wall. The princess spoke, her sorrowful eyes on Thag. You claim the heart and hand of one who is in truth a deer, changed by whim of witch or wizard, to the shape and semblance of a woman. While the torches flared and flickered between the shields and lances on the wall, the princess spoke again. By old remembered spells and ancient tales, by every mark and sign, 3 princes claim the heart and hand of one who is in truth a dear. I know the perils you have known, the leagues forlorn, the weather born, to lay your trophies at my nameless feet. Love me truly, fail me never, woman will I be forever. But if love shall fail me thrice, I shall vanish in a trice. So tells the tale, so runs the spell. Prince Thag, do you love me well? The eldest son of Claude rose to his feet. Without a word, he broke the golden tusks of the great blue boar in his hands and turned his back. Love has failed her once, moaned Tocco. Love me truly, fail me never. Woman will I be forever. But if love shall fail me thrice, I shall vanish in a trice. So tells the tale, so runs the spell. Prince Gallo, do you love me well? Prince Gallo rose to his feet. Without a word, he broke the sacred sword of Lorelei across his knee and walked away and turned his back. Love has failed her twice, whispered the royal recorder. Love me truly, fail me never. Woman will I be forever. But if love shall fail me thrice, I shall vanish in a trice. So tells the tale, so runs the spell. Prince John, do you love me well? Love will fail her thrice, croaked the royal physician. Prince John rose to his feet and lifted the silver chalice filled with rubies.
Throw wide the portals, roared King Claude. Let the white deer pass. Who reaches for his lance dies like a hog. Throw wide the portals, let the white deer pass.
And through the castle halls the order echoed,
Throw wide the portals! Throw wide the portals! Throw wide the portals!
The white figure that stood before the golden chair was still. All eyes were strained, all necks were craned, as Prince John raised the chalice. One could hear a petal fall, whispered the royal recorder. I cannot hear a thing, said Tocco.
Silence, roared the king, and give her room. Denials in John's heart, all hear her doom.
Prince John spoke. What you have been, you are not, and what you are, you will forever be. I place this trophy in the hands of love. The princess took the chalice in her hands. You hold my heart, said John. As the young prince spoke, the torches died to the tranquility of candlelight, and April fragrance filled the room, and John beheld a new and lovelier princess than he had ever seen in life or dreams. The fragrance, if my memory serves, old Tocco said, of lilacs. Shh, said the royal physician. Who is this prince, this tall, strange prince, who takes the chalice from the lady's hand? Whispered the royal recorder. For out of nowhere, in a tick of time, a stranger had indeed appeared, a stranger tall and dark and young, who stood beside the lovely maid and held her chalice in his hands, that she might descend the few steps from the golden chair and place her hand in John's. King Claude, who had seen the strange prince at the same moment as the others, closed his eyes and rubbed them with his knuckles and opened them again.
Your name, your kingdom, and your cause, bellowed Claude.
The tall prince bowed to the king and spoke.
Before I name, my kingdom, and my cause, I seek a royal favor.
Name its nature,
said the king. A deed undone that long has wanted doing. The prince set down the silver chalice on the golden chair. The royal recorder cleared his throat. The favor should be named, described, and specified, the royal recorder said. It should be duly entered on a scroll and signed and sealed.
Nonsense, said the king. I like the young man's eye. The favor's granted.
At this, the unknown prince strode to where Thag and Gallo stood. He caught them up, one in each arm, and knocked their heads together 7 times and set them down. The king's loud laughter shook the iron shields on the wall.
What god is this who plays with men like puppets?
The young prince bowed. My name is Tell, your majesty, and I'm the youngest son of Thorg, the mighty king of Northland.
A rich and mighty monarch, and by all report a good man in the saddle, said the king.
You have my kingdom and my name, and now my cause. Your majesty, may I present to you, your sons, and your retainers, my youngest sister, noble daughter of a noble king, affianced bride of brave Prince Jorn. Prince Tell bowed deeply to the dark and lovely lady, whose hand still clung to Jorn's. Her Royal Highness, the Princess Rosanor of Northland. Claude and his men were held as by a new enchantment, and for a long, astonished moment, no one stirred and no one spoke. The face of Claude went all the colors of a flag before it found at last its normal flush of wine and weather.
Liars and fiddles, bellowed Claude. Meats and wines. What wine, on second thought, is fit for this occasion? Melt down 1,000,000 rubies. But stay, on third thought, wine in bottles. The magic's turned my heart, but not my stomach. Prince Tell and Princess Rosanor, I bid you warmth and welcome, health and joy.
The case lacks precedent. And lacking precedent is difficult, if not indeed impossible, to classify, coordinate, and catalogue. We have here terms of 2 distinct and unrelated sets of spells which overlap. Overlapping in the legal sense, I heartily deplore. He babbled on, but no one listened. There was a great running and scurrying and laughter and movement, while lyres and fiddles played. The royal wizard produced a shower of silver stars, and a great table in the banquet hall was filled with meats and flowers and wine. Prince Tell sat at the head of the table beside the king, and on their right sat Rosanor, and on their left sat Jorn. The king smote the table a heavy blow, which set the crystal dancing.
I knew her, said the king, by the manner of her speech and the carriage of her head.
I knew her, said the royal recorder, by the smallness of her foot and the slimness of her ankle. I knew her, said Tocco, by the highness of her forehead and the brightness of her eye. I knew her by the singing in my heart, said Jorn. Thag and Gallo glowered at their plates.
You are a dolt, said Thag. You are a dunce, said Gallo. Claude stared about him into the dark places under the shields.
There is a stupid dwarf, he said to Tell, who creeps about the night like cats.
Like cats, or like a cat?
Like cats, said Claude. He seems to sit in 6 or 7 corners all at once.
You've had him long? asked Tell.
3 months or so, said Claude. He drank off a tankard of wine, popped up one day, and I let him stay. A good hand with the horses and the hounds, and what is more, a better judge of men than I, in proof of which I owe the misbegotten clown a cask of gems. Never lost a wager with a lighter heart. I have a silly fondness for the dwarf. Can't say I ever showed it, though. I hope no harm's befallen him.
Quando's gone forever, sire, said Tell.
in an old familiar rumble that the king remembered well. The tankard clattered to the floor, and Claude leaped to his feet and closed both eyes and opened one and stared at Tell. "You're Quando?" cried the king. "I was," said Tell. The king drank off another bowl of wine before he spoke again. "I like the taste of wine," he said, "the feel of leather. I'll ride or drink your father down in any weather. I am a hunter, sir, a fair man in the saddle. Ah, yes," his eyes shone, "in any weather. I have no mind for miracle, my friend, and were I king of all the kings, I'd make an end of magic. I have few graces, Tell, no doubt for lack of daughters, and if I have offended you, I humbly beg your pardon. Wizardry's a wofuller thing than wine, and it's befuddled stronger heads than mine." He drank deep from the bowl once more. "A deer's now Rosenor, a dwarf is Tell. What rhyme or signal broke the spell? Who could this dark enchantment bring upon the children of a king?" He smote the table a great blow and called for silence. "Magic bitter, magic sweet," Claude began. He groped for a rhyme and could not find it. "Has united the great house of Claude with the great house of Thorg." He drank from the huge bowl of wine. "A man I can outride and outdrink the best day he ever saw, though that's beside the present point. We have beheld a miracle this day which wants explaining. I give you young Prince Fell." He sat down and rose again with some effort. "Tell," he said, with great dignity, and resumed his chair. All eyes were on the tall young prince, except the eyes of Thag and Gallo, who were muttering to each other. "The wine has mulled your wits," said Thag. "I tell you the dragon has to be wound up," said Gallo, "with a great big key." "Silence!" roared the king. And young Prince Tell rose to his feet and began the tale of his sister's enchantment and his own. "My father, sire, the great King Thorg of Northland, was loved by many damsels in his youth," the prince began. "His feats in battle and the chase broke open the tender locks of 500 hearts." "Puff!" said Claude. "Get on with it." "One damsel was a dark and jealous wench, named Nagrom Yaf, who, on the day my father wed the princess of his choice, swore a frightful vengeance on his house. 1 year and 20 days ago, the Princess Rosenor and I were riding in the wilderness of Gwain. The sun went down, the wind rose, and we were lost. A crooked moon came up, and by its light we saw a creature lying in the grass, a creature like a vulture, dead or dreaming. Before I could dismount, it seemed to rise and float before our eyes, making horrid signs and symbols in the air. A witch in the unspeakable employ of Nagrom Yaf, she cast her awful spells, the while we sat like stone on stony horses. Rosenor was changed into a deer which could be disenchanted only if and when a king and his 3 sons should bring the deer to bay. But even then she would not know and could not speak her name. But on such day and in such hour, as she should hear a prince declare his love for her, in spite of doubt and dread and tattletale, the spell would break like crystal struck on stone, and she'd be Princess Rosenor again." "And what if young Prince Jorn here had not declared his love?" he asked. "If love had failed my sister thrice," said Tell, "she would have wandered nameless all her life." "These spells," the royal recorder said, "are shockingly untidy. These spells should all be written down and witnessed and attested. Of all assumptions in our law, the strongest one is this, scribendum est, which is to say that if the scroll does not exist, the scroll does not exist.
And if the scroll does not exist, the spell is null and void, violable, unviable, and fallible, and tolerable only to the gullible. These present spells, i.e. spells A and B involving Rosenor and Tell, hereinafter to be referred to as 1 and 2, should either be recast or just ignored, as never having been in legal fact, which holds that if a thing that should not be has been, it never was. It's vastly more elastic and rewarding than the mundane or ordinary fact, which holds that just because the thing has been, it was.
Scribble, scrabble, scrabble,
said Claude. My own enchantment, Tell resumed, was something else and other. I was changed into a dwarf possessed of all remembrance. I knew my name and Rosenor's, but lacked the power to name our names or tell our tale in language plain or roundabout to her or any other. But on such day and in such hour, as I should hear a prince declare his love for Rosenor, in spite of doubt and dread and tattletale, then I would be Prince Tell again. If love had failed the princess thrice, I would have been the squat dwarf Quando all my life.
How came you here? Demanded Claude. How came your sister to our woeful woods?
She fled through 20 kingdoms in the year of our despair, said Tell, and always Quando followed her 100 leagues behind. Minstrels, knights, and travellers would point the way the swiftest deer in all the world had gone, and I would wander on. I lost her in the snowy months, and wandered here, for men had told me tales of your enchanted woods. Enchanted woods attract enchanted things. My heart was high with hope. You were a king's sire, and your sons were 3, as stipulated in the sorcery. I fed your hounds and horses for my keep, and visited the magic woods each night, dropping softly from my chamber window to the ground. At last she came. I saw her flash like moonlight through the fireflies and the snow. I'd met a wizard in the woods, the mighty wizard Roe. I could not name my name to him, or Rosenor's, or tell our tale, but wizards have a way of knowing things. In guise of minstrel here one night, he sang you songs about a deer as swift as light.
I thought I knew the saucy varlet's face, roared Claude, and said so at the time.
The tall prince smiled and went on with the tale. By this device and that device, the wizard played with time. I fancy Thag and Gallo were delayed. I fancy Jorn was speeded on his way. The wizard's magic brought the princes riding home, not singly, but together.
He must have been the round man in the tree, said Thag.
He must have been the man in blue, said Gallo. He must have been the little man who told me why the cherries fall, said Jorn.
I knew they rode by sorcery, and said so at the time, cried Claude.
I don't remember that you did, the royal recorder said.
Nor I,
said Tocco.
Nor I,
said the royal physician, who was striking his knee sharply under the table to test his reflexes. I do, said Rosenor. There's magic here and sorcery, he cried. I heard it clearly.
As wise as she is lovely, shouted Claude. Surrounded by these dodderers and dolts, I blow my horn in wasteland, so to speak.
He picked up a fresh bowl of wine that had been set before him. So ends the tale of Rosenor's enchantment and my own, said Tell. The rest you know. He bowed to the king and sat down.
I blow my horn in wasteland, repeated Claude,
and since he seemed about to weep, the lyres and fiddles struck up a lively tune. King Claude got to his feet and raised a tankard of wine.
Here's joy and jollity,
he said to Rosenor and Tell, and to Rosenor and Jorn.
And here's to Thorg, a mighty king, the second huntsman of his time. All drink,
The lyres and fiddles played brightly, and the royal wizard produced a flight of white doves and a shower of red roses. The royal physician, who always sneezed when there were doves and roses, got up and backed out of the room, bowing and sneezing. In the darkness of the corridor outside the banquet hall, he stumbled over a large and dreamy flop-eared dog and fell flat on his back. He limped up to his chamber, sneezing and protesting. The wizard produced a silver fountain and a golden rain above the lyres and fiddles. Old Tocco rose to his feet and recited a legend for a sundial, which had come to him as he watched John dance with Rosanor and Rosanor dance with Tell. As slow as time, as long as love, the rose, the fountain, and the dove. The royal recorder, who had drunk more wine than was his custom, recited laws of Mortmain and Chancery to himself. King Claude rambled on above the music and the laughter. Sing hey and ho and drink and dance, but not too long or late. Tomorrow when the sun is high, we ride to Northland. Oh, he winced as he pronounced the name and closed both eyes and opened one. I still maintain I'd rather die than drink that northern wine. It's bleak as turtle tears and harsh as witches' spells. I swear the stuff is only good for rubbing rust from buckles and from bells. He raised a bowl of white claudurnium high above his head. God bless us all, he cried, and drank it off, and went to bed through the laughter and the music, the silver fountain and the golden rain, the roses and the doves. The next day, when the sun would have marked the hour of noon on Tocco's sundials, if it could have got at them, the king and his sons and Rosanor and Tell started off for Northland in full panoply and jingling trappings. 100 mules brought up the rear, carrying 200 casks of red and white and yellow wines. Epilogue. There is a dusty yellow scroll written in the olden time, which tells that on the day and in the hour when Prince John said to Rosanor, "You hold my heart," the dark and jealous Nagrom Yath and the wicked witch in her employ were riven and shriveled by a bolt of lightning from the blue and removed completely from the world as by a strong and strange obliterant. I find no cause to doubt the scroll, for it is signed and sealed and witnessed and attested.